Hello and welcome to the Monday Night Big Book Study. I'm going to present this Big Book Study over a course of several months, probably in 45-minute to 1-hour increments, anonymously. I'm not going to say who I am or where I am. I just feel incredibly motivated to share with you the same opportunity that was given to me. So I've been a long time member of Alcoholics Anonymous, decades, and it has not been a joyous ride, happy, joyous, and free the entire time. In fact, at 5 years of sobriety, I had made the decision, which I did not share with one single person, that I was literally going to kill myself because I was so sick. I was 5 years sober. I had perfect meeting attendance. I went to a meeting every day. I had AA commitments galore. I had a sponsor. I worked the steps out of the 12 and 12 about 3 times. And again, I didn't drink at this point for about 5 years, but the disease of alcoholism continued to progress despite all of that. I did not recover with those activities that we are all trained to do. You know, I went to a treatment center. I went to a recovery home, therapist, psychiatrist, had a sponsor, perfect meeting attendance commitments, everything was taking direction because I was scared. I did not want to go back out there and drink, but I wasn't getting better. And my mental state was severe depression and suicide. And then one day, like almost immediately after I had made that internal decision that I didn't share with anyone, somebody got up at the podium and said that they needed to work with other alcoholics as part of their rehabilitation. In so many words, she said, was there anybody there willing to let them for her to take them through the big book so that she could get better, to help her. And this was a person that I really liked. And I saw her struggling. She was not, she was really struggling like I was. And I really felt for her. So I said, yes, of course I will give you an hour of my time to help you. Okay. So I met her. I thought, well, I've given up everything already. I've already made a decision. I'm on my way out. So I met with her, and what she did was give me the first lesson in the Big Book Study, which I'm going to share with you in this video. And that was the moment that my life changed. It wasn't instantly better. It did take a while. But what I was convinced that what I was doing wasn't working and that this was a solution for me. So I abandoned myself to what was actually the first education I'd ever got on the big book, despite all of that perfect meeting attendance. So as a result, that was a long time ago. It was a 3rd edition times. I have to carry this message. I have to give away what was given to me. And I did not realize, how many people are actually using YouTube, because I'm an older person, but I learned it in a marketing class. So I thought, oh, can I give this away anonymously? So here we are. Welcome to the Monday Night Big Book Study. So this is not an AA meeting. We're here to learn about specific facts, history, and context for the book Alcoholics Anonymous, which was first published in 1939. And because we have more content to cover than time to cover it, please hold your questions to the last 10 to 15 minutes. We will open up the parking lot for questions and discussions at that time. And for those of you watching this on YouTube, you can email your questions to thumperbigbook@gmail.com. Those will be answered anonymously. But I thought I'd leave this in here so you can see how we actually set this up in real life, face to face at the we meet every Monday night, and this is our format. When I started doing this, I didn't have the parking lot, and what was happening was we were not getting through the Big Book study. There was constant interruption, people just raising their hands and then talking. So we all have the gift of gab, and that's cool. We need the gift of gab to carry the message, you'll find out. But, there's one thing about carrying the message and talking at length with the newcomer, and then there's another thing about just talking about yourself for a long time or not letting others talk. Okay, so this is your course. Please help us adhere to the common welfare and help the facilitator start and end on time, manage disruptions, and participate in the parking lot discussion. Here are some other suggested books and materials. While this is not required, it is strongly recommended that you purchase or borrow the following books and materials for our study to get the most out of the experience. The Anonymous Press Study Edition of Alcoholics Anonymous. This book is great because it has a blank page next to each page of the Big Book. You can put all your notes there. Pass It On, we're going to refer to Pass It On many, many times. Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And then The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. This is the only other book mentioned in your Big Book, Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay, it's mentioned on page 569 in the 3rd edition and page 28. Back in the day, I used to rent that book from the library on multiple cassette tapes. This big, huge plastic thing with all these cassette tapes, and I'd listen to it, and then I have to go back to the library and check it back out. Now you can download it free on iTunes, someone told me. I was like, wow. So this book is kind of a hard read. It's in the late 1800s. William James was very scholarly, I found it easier to absorb it through audio. Okay, so a dedicated notebook or notepad, access to a dictionary from 1935, although a modern dictionary will do, and some pens and highlighters. Okay, let's get started here. Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience. It's going to be somewhere around 567 to 570, depending on which edition of the Big Book you are using. Okay. So have you ever opened a book or got started on a novel, let's say, and somewhere in there you just had to know something, and you cheated and you went to the back of the book to see who did it? Or have you ever been working in a textbook in school and had to flip to the back and hope that the answers were there? Have you ever done any of those things? I think we all have. Okay, we're going to do that right now together. Okay, what is the answer? What is the solution to our malady? Well, the answer is a spiritual experience. Now, even though you know what the answer is, does it feel like you fully understand it yet? No. We need to know, what is a spiritual experience? How do we get it? Okay? And our first obligation to the newcomer is an adequate presentation of the program. Bill Wilson said this in The Grapevine in 1941. Okay, so I don't have a lot of cross-references there to back this up, but if you want to do the digging and let me know, I appreciate it. Okay, so why would Bill Wilson find it necessary to make this statement in 1941? Didn't the Big Book come out in 1939? Okay, so as we read through the forewords, as we get through that part in the study, you'll see that around this time, there was kind of an explosion of meetings, that the membership grew, it expanded. And as a result of that, a couple things happened. One, the first 100 men and women weren't there to keep the tone in all these new meetings popping up all over the place, right? We also had hospitals dumping loads of patients off, right? And what happens in hospitals? More of like a group therapy type situation, right? Y'all sit in a circle and talk about your feelings and all that, right? So that's where, things start to change from what the first 100 men and women had. And so that was in 1941. What do you think is happening by 2019? Have you guys ever played that telephone game, right? Everybody sits in a circle and someone whispers something into someone's ear and it whispers all the way around. And when it gets to the other side, is it accurate? Is it the right thing? Okay. So, yeah, there could be some of that going on in our program. And I'd like you to notice that it says the program, not my program or Bill's program. The program, it's singular, and it's the same answer for all afflicted with alcoholism. Okay, so let's get to it. Spiritual experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book. Upon careful reading shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. So we have a cross-reference for you, page 27, the fourth paragraph. Let's take a look at that. Okay. Here we go. When we get to page 27 in the Big Book Study, I actually spent an entire hour on this page. It is jam-packed with information, and it's one of my favorite passages. Okay, but right now we're just going to focus on this one paragraph. Yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. Vital means necessary for life. To me, these occurrences are phenomena, unexplainable. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So this is the answer. The spiritual experience, psychic change, personality change, spiritual awakening. And I invite you to continue with us through the Big Book Study because we're going to really dive deep into all of that. Okay. What is driving you now? Okay, here's page 27. I guess I should have gone forward with the slides. Early members thought that they had to have a white light experience like Bill Wilson. So Bill Wilson's experience is in detail on page 120, and we're actually going to read it together when we go through Bill's story. So Appendix 2 was added because they wanted to talk about something called the educational variety of a spiritual experience, more like Dr. Bob's experience, and it's just as effective for long-term sobriety. All right, let's talk about the car analogy. So assume we all arrive together in a car and we're 5 miles from any other buildings or people and there's only a phone. When we're ready to leave, the car won't start. So what actions would we logically take? Well, I wouldn't just pop right up and say, we're out of gas. I'm going to run 5 miles and get some gas, put some gas in this car, and we'll be on our way. No. I don't think anybody would do that, right? They would first pause and kind of check out a couple little things, right? Check how much gas is on the dashboard through the indicator. You know, that's going to tell us. Perhaps pop the hood and kind of take a look at the battery connectors, any of that white buildup that's causing no spark. Also, that's sound when you turn the key. I mean, there's just a couple little things we can do. Try to do our own investigation of what could be wrong with the car, right? Now, by the way, we have an amazing worksheet for this. So if you email me, I will send you the worksheet that goes along with this. Now, let's say, we're a smart bunch of drunks. We've identified the problem. And the problem is it's a dead battery. Okay. Now that I know what the problem is, and I've admitted that the problem is a dead battery, the next thing I'm going to do is form a belief. Do I have the power to fix that battery? No. Does anybody there have the power to fix that battery? No. Okay. So now we have to make a decision. And someone says, oh, I have a AAA membership. I have a AAA membership. Let's call AAA. Now, at this point, it seems like we've gone through a lot of problem solving. Now, at this point, does the car start? At this point, does AAA even know we're going to call them? Is a truck on its way with a new battery? No. And that's because all we've done is make a decision at this point. We have to actually take the action of picking up the phone, making the call, and getting the result. This is a normal problem-solving process. And this is the same normal problem-solving process that we are going to use with the problem of alcoholism, with the disease of alcoholism. Okay? Now, we're going to do that with the Big Book. So I'm going to read you something from the original manuscript. Now, when Bill Wilson went to write Chapter 5, he felt inadequate to do so. Does that sound familiar? Feeling inadequate? So what he did was he sat in his chair and he was quiet and he prayed. And after about 30 minutes, he said the pen had a life of its own. And what I'm going to read to you now is the raw data, or the raw writing that came out before it was edited by everybody else. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after have been designed to sell you 3 pertinent ideas. A, that you are alcoholic and cannot manage your own life. B, that probably no human power can relieve your alcoholism. C, that God can and will. If you're not convinced on these vital issues, you ought to reread the book to this point, or else throw it away. If you are convinced, you're now at step 3, which is that you've made a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand Him. Right? Right here, decision, step 3. So all of this stuff comes before the decision. Okay? That's on page 60 in the Big Book. So the beginning of the Big Book up to page 59 is the investigation of the problem. We're not actually asked to do step 1 until page 59 or 60. You don't read step 1 until you get to page, I'm sorry, I'm just going to look. I don't even have it in front of me real quick. It's page 59. The first step does not appear until page 59. And then here's the second step, right? And here's the third step. And here are steps 4 through 11. And here's step 12. So the investigation is up to page 59. Admitting the problem, forming a belief, making a decision. 1, 2, 3, 4 through 11, and 12. So we're going to logically solve the problem the same way you would solve a car problem. Oh, here we go. Here's a copy of what it's the original manuscript. If you are not convinced, you ought to reread the book to this point, or else throw it away. To me, that is a very powerful thing. If I am not convinced on step 1 or step 2, there is no point in going on to step 3. Okay, now admitting that I'm an alcoholic is a huge thing. And the first thing I was asked to do when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, the very first thing I did, it was like a half an hour before the first meeting, and I got to the club. There was a 20 question test, right? All these questions. And then I had to give this to some of the older ladies at the time, and they gave me an A. Right? And it's like, that's supposed to convince me I'm an alcoholic? I have this insane alcoholic mind. I have an obsession of the mind. Its greatest obsession is to drink like a normal person. I think a 20-question test is not enough to convince me of what an alcoholic is or that I am an alcoholic, right? So by the time you go through this investigation with us up to page 59, you can be very clear on what an alcoholic is. An alcoholic is mentally and bodily different from his fellows. What does it mean to be mentally different? It means I suffer from an obsession. An obsession is a persistent, reoccurring thought that does not respond to reason. Persistent, reoccurring thought that does not respond to reason. What is it? And the strange mental blank spot, which we will get into. What is the strange mental blank spot? What does it mean to be bodily different? It means that my body is quote unquote allergic to alcohol, and I believe that they use that word allergic because they didn't have a better word. But there's something different that when alcohol comes in my body, right? So unless I am in fit spiritual condition, the insane idea is going to win out. The persistent, reoccurring thought that is stronger than any reason I have not to drink is going to win out. And once take that first drink and that insane thought wins, now I have alcohol in my body, and the phenomena of craving is going to take drink number 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then what? I could be drunk for years, or I could die. And that's really what it means to be alcoholic. It has nothing to do with willpower, intelligence, or any of those things. Okay. So let's talk about the pine box analogy. So someone who suffers from anaphylactic shock gets buried and put 6 feet under. Now, all of a sudden, they wake up and they're aware of their situation. Could you imagine being buried alive 6 feet under? Beyond human aid. What that person needs is a miracle, right? What would you be doing down there? Would you be screaming, hello, hello, help me, I'm trapped in here, get me out. But no human can hear you. Literally gonna need a miracle. Literally need a miracle. And my question to you is, if there is a higher power that came down or showed up, whatever, and you were buried alive and you had just a little bit of time left before you were going to die, would you argue with that higher power about what its name is, what its gender is, or any kind of, or would you take the help? Right? We have people in pine boxes walking around saying, no problem here. Okay, let's get back to Appendix 2. God, I love Appendix 2. It is such a powerful, powerful chapter. Okay, so yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden, revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. And that's what you're going to find to be more common among us. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, we find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Okay, so there's a lot going on here. Yeah, William James is the author of the only other book mentioned in our textbook, Varieties of Religious Experience. And in there, he identified 7 attributes of a spiritual experience. And I'm pretty sure I have those. Here they are. The 7 characteristics of a mystical spiritual experience. The inability to capture the experience in ordinary language. The notion that mystical experiences reveal an otherwise hidden or inaccessible knowledge. The simple fact that the mystical experience lasts for a relatively brief, short period of time. The sense that mystical experiences happen to someone, that they are somehow beyond the range of human volition or control. The sense of oneness, wholeness, or completeness, the transcending of ego. The sense that mystical experiences transcend time. A sense that the mystical experiences reveal the nature of our true cosmic self, one that is beyond difference and duality, ego, and selfishness. This is what Bill had. He had this all in one moment, right? I had a very similar experience that just completely changed me forever. There is absolutely nothing anyone can say to me that will ever make me doubt the existence of God. Okay, so there you go. The 7 attributes of a spiritual experience from William James. Oh, okay. So with few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves. Okay, so the location of God is actually given to us in our big book on page 55. Could you please go over to page 55 with me now? Second real paragraph. Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child, who does that leave out, is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured, which is blocked, by calamity, by pomp, and by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. Calamity is the tragedy that you've experienced in your life. It's the tragedy that you've observed with others. Pomp, of course, is pride, ego, and worship of other things is talked about on page 54. We found, too, that we had been worshipers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves. Okay, I'm back on page 55. For faith in a power greater than ourselves, a miraculous demonstration of that power in human lives, are as fact as old as man himself. We finally saw, and you only see when you look, that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found the great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there he may be found. What does the word only mean? Okay, so have you noticed that the steps are not about adding anything more into you? The steps are a process of removal, facing and removing the blocks within you so that you can have an experience of this great reality within. Facing and removing that which is blocking me from living in the awareness of this, the location of God. Okay. Okay, so I'm going back to Appendix 2. Go with me over here. Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. So if you don't have God consciousness, the only other thing you have is ego consciousness. We could be in ego consciousness or God consciousness. And I was only in and only knew ego consciousness, and that was an intolerable situation. Most emphatically, so with emphasis, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover. So this is looking at your life in comparison to the first 100 men and women, right? Practicing honesty, introspection as we go through the investigation of the Big Book, which is the beginning to page 59. Provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts, and he can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable. So willingness is demonstrated only by action. Willingness is demonstrated only by action. So people can say things, but you only know they need it if they do it, right? And if they say something and they don't do it, you know they're not serious. So willingness is demonstrated only by action. Honesty is an awareness of where you are at, which I know is not, correct to say it that way, but if you have a better idea, let me know. Honesty is an awareness of where you are at. For example, when I was 15 years old, I was a hot mess disaster of a drunk. And I said, I am not going to be an alcoholic like my mother. I am not an alcoholic. And I really believe that to be true. But the truth was, I am an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic, and I was going to be like my mother. But I wasn't living in the honesty of that, right? I was living in, I didn't have the awareness. I didn't have the awareness. Have you ever met somebody who you know is a full-blown alcoholic and they genuinely say that they're not, right? This is about developing this rigorous honesty of being able to practice introspection and look within. Where am I on the steps? Do I have a new relationship with my Creator? Right? Now, open-mindedness. This is not about open-mindedness to the entire world, all the food and music and the incredible abundance of variety out there. It's all right. Don't worry about that. I really thought that meant I had to be open-minded to everything. It's an open-mindedness to all spiritual concepts. Now, let's stop for a minute and talk about the spiritual concepts that are present in our steps. Prayer and meditation, service, and introspection. Prayer, meditation, service, and introspection. Are you open to that? Now, when you first read this, an open mind, an openness to all spiritual concepts, what did your ego mind say? Did it bring up maybe some old ideas about God or religion, or old ideas of what you think you know about God? Right? That's a certain type of prejudice that we're going to face in the Big Book. The Big Book talks about prejudice a lot, and it's about prejudice around spiritual concepts. Okay, so yeah, we would like to have a chart on the board on what you need to recover and what will keep you from recovering. We know what I need to recover is willingness, demonstrated only by action, honesty, which is an awareness of where you are at, introspection, introspective honesty, open mind to all spiritual concepts. And what will keep me from recovering is an attitude of intolerance, which is the inability to look at someone else's opinion or viewpoint, or belligerent denial, which is warlike or aggressive behavior. So you could write, on the board, you could put a line down on one side and define these things, what I need to recover, and on this side, what will keep me from recovering. And that is Appendix 2. That's the first lesson in Appendix 2. And I hope you come back and join me for the next chapter.